Hello everyone, welcome back to another art time lapse. Today I'll be doing a piece with a homage to pandas, which is an animal that I've always had an affinity for. After all, it was one of the first animals that I first started painting when I used gouache for the first time. Right now I'm using Holbein acrylic gouache. It's not a sponsored video, but I just wanted to explain to you what kind of materials I use for this piece of painting. Acrylic gouache traditionally is used for a lot of illustration because it dries matte and the colors are really hyperpigmented and looks amazing and it's easy to scan afterwards. For me, I love using this type of watercolor gouache material because it can work both as a watercolor and has some acrylic medium, and I'll explain a little bit about that as I go through this piece. I first start by watering down my gouache with plenty of water, and you can see I kind of lay down where the panda's body and head and ears are going to be with this very watered down gouache. And it has a very similar consistency and effect as a watercolor, as you can see after I add plenty of water onto it. With that said, with each subsequent layer, I add less and less water, and it will have more of a acrylic effect in that you can just layer colors on top of each other, which you can't do with regular watercolor. Here, as you can see, I have to wait for the previous layer to dry before I can add on the next layer, or else the gouache kind of blends right in with the previous layer. I know that blue is not consistently something you would see for a panda color, but I just thought I really love pops of colors in my artwork. As you can probably see from some of my older art time lapses, a lot of my pieces are very colorful and very whimsical, dreamy, and plays kind of like the theme that I've been going for has come out. So after I add in gouache, I use a little bit of oil pencil by Faber-Castell. Oil pencils are really nice for blending, and gouache is a great base medium before adding on other types of mixed media, because it's very easy for other mixed media to be applied on top because it's not super glossy. And you can see that the oil pencil does apply pretty easily, and I just do it slowly. It does make a difference if you're adding on the pencil marks slowly by layering on top versus pushing really hard on the oil pencil onto the piece. It does create a different type of effect, and the effect I'm going for is something a bit more dreamy, more surreal. So I really have to take my time layering on each color and not push myself to push hard on the oil pencil, which I used to do just to get the colors on the piece. It's something that took me many years to understand. As you can see, I'm layering on many different types of oil pencil colors to create the darker shade, so that it creates more dimension rather than just a dark indigo or like a dark green. I will put on some of the violets and darker reds to create that dimension. I want this panda to be holding a cup of tea or maybe juice. I just feel like maybe a red tea would be nice, given that I want this piece to have more of a surreal, relaxing kind of feel to it. I also want the panda's shirt to stand out from the rest of the panda, so I'm adding on a little bit of yellow to create a glow for the shirt and differentiate it from the rest of the panda. I really enjoy doing pieces like this. It's so much fun because it's very relaxing, adding on layer and layer, and there's not much pressure that I have to work on a timeline, because if you are an artist, you probably know that for watercolors you only have a very select time frame to get the piece done before the water dries up and you can't work on that part of the art or illustration anymore. Whereas for gouache, I can reactivate it later on, or for oil pencils, I can put it away and get back to it. Being a mommy, I don't always have a defined amount of time that I have to work with my art. I may have to stop anytime and get started again later whenever I can find some time in between my kids' naps and maybe breaks in between the middle of the night. So I try to maximize whatever time I have, and having this flexibility of using a little bit of oil pencils and gouache and going back to the piece whenever I have time, it just makes it so much more easier and more relaxing and less stressful that I have to get stuff done. I'm doing this piece on Stonehedge's hot press watercolor paper. I really like hot press watercolor paper in that it's so smooth. It's great to add fine details, but the cold press is really nice as well because there's texture to the paper, and I just create a little bit more, I guess, dimension and interest in the piece. But lately I've been gravitating towards hot press, and I'm doing this on a 7 by 7 inch piece of paper, which is a smaller piece than I usually do, but I do feel like there's more of a sense of success when I complete a piece. And with a 7 inch by 7 inch piece, it's a lot faster to complete as opposed to a larger piece. I think that typically for artists, we aim to do bigger pieces because that way if we scan it and we make prints of it, you can have more size options available if you do a larger piece, because you can also shrink the dimensions, whereas you can't do that with a smaller piece. But at the end of the day, I really want to enjoy the process rather than focusing on, oh, am I going to sell this piece, or like, how am I going to monetize this? Because I think it kind of takes the fun out of the artwork if I'm always thinking about how I will monetize whatever interests I have from art. Lately there has been a lot of social media hype on YouTube and like Instagram about how you can sell your art, how you can monetize your artwork. I think it's very stressful for artists to always think about that, given that like you're already really pressed for like coming out with new material all the time. It's just my 2 cents. So here I decided I'm gonna add a little bit of pattern to the Panda's shirt because I think it'll make the piece so much more interesting. I wanted, like I mentioned, a more surreal theme, so I'm gonna do maybe some branches and leaves on it, maybe some berries to add on a pop color. I'm using a Sakura jelly pen to add on some of the white detailing. Jelly roll actually works really well. I picked it up at my local stationery store, but I know they sell at art store or a lot of department stores, London Drugs, Staples, they would carry it as well. And it's really great to add on white highlights at the very end. It does dry permanent, so it's archival, but if you make a mistake on it, you can probably dab it with your hand or apply a little bit of water and it comes right off if you do it right away. So I like that flexibility with this pen, and it's just so fun to add highlights on at the very end with it. I usually do the highlights at the very end to kind of think, okay, where is the light coming from and which part of the character it's gonna glisten or spark from the light. I try not to add too much, but it's always one of my favorite parts to do. So the piece is coming together nicely. I do think that this blue panda is looking pretty good. I got the initial idea for this piece from just an illustration that I saw, just as more of a fun piece for me to play around and practice. You can see I usually stick a sticky note on the bottom of my palm to prevent smudging. Is a neat hack that I've just inherited recently. I put the sticky side on the bottom of my palm, that way I can kind of maneuver around the piece without smudging it too much and also causing less smudging on the bottom of my hand as well. For the color scheme, I've chosen something of more cooler colors, which is, I think, more of a general preference for me, but I know a lot of people like warmer colors as well. Well, I think I'm almost wrapped up here. Thank you so much for joining me on this art time lapse. If you like this type of videos, please consider like, subscribe, and sharing. It will really help a lot with this channel. Well, until next time, I'll see you in the next video. I hope you take care, stay creative, and stay safe. Bye for now, my friends.